Avery, I thought about ways that we could do a Sam Raimi-esque intro shoot,
Okay.
but I don't want to move the cameras.
Right.
So we'll just do it. We'll do digital zooms. Just do like the.
Okay. Yeah. Wait. There. Sam Raimi. We did it.
It's pretty good, right?
Like and subscribe.
Pretty good production value around here.
I tell you people, I'm on a different level.
Anyway, why are we doing all this Sam Raimi stuff, Reed?
Well, big milestone today. Our first Sam Raimi movie.
The first
Our
one?
first Western,
Yeah?
I think.
Yeah.
That's two.
I think it's our first 90s movie, right?
Might be. Definitely our first appearance of Gene Hackman.
Oh wait, I think SLC Punk is 99.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so but that's not a 90s movie.
Yeah,
That's a 2000s
That's
movie.
2000s. Yeah. Yeah. No, it checks a lot of boxes for us.
Yeah.
We took a voyage into The Quick and the Dead.
Absolutely.
1995, 1 year before the world was graced with us.
Exactly.
And
Everyone's first go-to when they think of Sam Raimi, it's this, and then there's all those other movies, so.
well, I feel like I am horribly ill-equipped to talk about Sam Raimi.
I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
And so I guess we could do a little background there. I think I've only seen his superhero movies, and I don't like any of them.
Right.
So that's a great starting spot. I've not seen Drag Me to Hell, and I've not seen Evil Dead. I don't have much interest in Evil Dead. I understand that everyone loves it, and great. Like the gross out comedy horror is not interesting to me.
Right.
Drag Me to Hell has been on my list for a while. Apparently that one is just like a fun and excellent horror movie.
Okay.
And then I'm probably forgetting a couple others, but short version is I'm going to be judging this one on its own merits.
Yeah.
I can't give it a lot of
Because
credit
you don't
for
like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans.
No,
Which you are kind of on your own.
Yeah.
That's generally a hot take.
Yeah, I
but-
didn't like even the second one that everyone claims is amazing. I didn't like it when I saw it when I was like 6. I didn't like it when I saw it when I was a teenager, and I watched it again like a year ago, and I didn't like it. So
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
And I feel like I will have my horror movie fan credentials taken by the horror movie police. But I have not seen Evil Dead either, or Evil Dead 2. It's kind of like going to watch like The Godfather.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I know it's going to be good, but I'm so aware of like parodies of it at this point, and like
Yeah.
seeing it utilized in other stuff. It's hard for me to like ever on a Friday night go throw it on, right?
Yeah.
Over other movies. I'm more likely to watch a much worse straight to Shudder streaming thing because it's like there's no pressure. I have seen Army of Darkness, the third one. I thought we saw it together, but I guess not.
No.
So I've seen Army of Darkness. I've seen all the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. I've seen his most recent film, The Multiverse of Madness, which is more a Marvel movie than a Sam Raimi movie, obviously. But yeah, I feel like we don't really have our Sam Raimi cred. But we're gonna work on that today.
Yeah, this is not a tier list of his movies by any means,
No.
but I think it's a
Just
cool
want to
one.
acknowledge we actually don't know his body of work that well. And when I
Yeah.
think about Sam Raimi, I think of crash zooms, Dutch angles, crazy camera movement. But I actually feel like I haven't experienced that before this movie. I just knew about it through pop culture.
Right.
I just knew that through parody and people saying that's what his movies are like, but I'd never actually like seen any of that.
And I mean, I've seen a lot of clips from Evil Dead,
Yeah.
right? Of like him dancing with the Deadites and the tracking shot through the
Yeah,
woods.
it's hard to avoid these.
Yeah, it's hard
things.
to. You've seen the little bits. Like I get the idea of the aesthetic, and some of that does show through. And like the most interesting parts, I think, of Multiverse of Madness were some of the Sam Raimi isms that just managed to sneak in there. And same, there's the famous tracking shot of all the tentacles for Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2.
Right.
Again, one of the more interesting parts of that
Yeah.
movie.
And parts that, as a kid, you wouldn't be like, "Ooh, what a creative choice of the director."
Yeah.
You're just like, it's Spider-Man.
Yeah, but
So-
in watching when I watched it the last year, still don't like it that much, but I was able to appreciate some of that.
And the Sam Raimi-ist.
Yeah, some of the
stuff.
Sam Raimi isms.
So anyway, clearly we have not watched enough Sam Raimi. We don't know a ton about his body of work. But this was your choice, Avery. So why did we go watch kind of the forgotten Sam Raimi Western?
Yeah, this was on my list before I remembered that it was Sam Raimi. I think in about 2003, we got a DVD double pack in Walmart that was Hidalgo and The Quick and the Dead. Something like that. Hidalgo, pretty solid. Quick and the Dead was the other one. I remembered 3 or 4 scenes from watching it, and I remembered that, Leonardo DiCaprio, Gene Hackman, I remembered that the cast was good, even going back that far. I remembered about 3 or 4 scenes, and they were interesting enough and have kind of stuck with me enough that I wanted to go back and revisit it and check it out.
Right.
And that was about my bar. I'm just looking for movies. It was kind of the right era, the right pieces around it, especially when I went and looked up the cast and was like, oh my God, Keith
Yeah.
David and Lance Henriksen and Mark Boone Jr. and Tobin Bell, like, oh my God.
It's kind of a Black Hawk Down scenario.
Yeah.
Where it's like everyone was so early in their career that no one could have known they'd all go on to be as big a stars as they would. But it's also a weird transitionary movie for that, because it's kind of like later in Gene Hackman and Sharon Stone's career.
Yeah.
But the first movie for Russell Crowe and Leo, and so it's like a weird mixed bag of people you recognize.
It is just kind of like an interesting little moment in time in Hollywood. And that was enough for me, just that I wanted to, there was enough interesting things about it that I thought it was worth a revisit.
Yeah.
You want to play poker with me, little lady?
Looks like you're having a pretty good time playing with yourself.
You hadn't seen it, and this was not your pick. Why don't you share some of your first thoughts on this motion picture?
I did not have the Hidalgo double pack from Walmart.
Well, that's your first mistake.
That's the only way you could have watched it.
Literally, I don't think they sold it by any other means.
I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was good. It's certainly not a movie that's gonna like stick with me for a long time, but I had fun watching it. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. I think there's so much interesting filmmaking within the movie. But at the end of the day, I think it's a pretty boilerplate Western with a script that easily could have been written in the 40s.
Yeah.
Elevated by Sam Raimi's direction. And that makes it fun to watch, engaging, but the movie doesn't have a ton of depth. I think there's not a ton to read into under the surface here. I'll talk about this more. I think 2 minutes into the movie, I could have predicted the ending. That's kind of Westerns. That's not necessarily this movie. That's like genre. There's stuff going on, but it's a fine movie. It's a solid movie that is elevated slightly above that by some really great filmmaking, some good performances, some not so good performances.
Yeah.
It's a real mixed bag on the performances front. But I had a good time. It's one I'll probably won't stick with me. I kind of understand why your child brain retained only a couple scenes and why it's not thought of amongst his like big tentpole movies. I get why this one is less remarkable when you compare it to Evil Dead or Spider-Man. Those are much bigger, more easily recognizable films.
Or to even within Westerns of the last 20 years,
Yeah.
right? You talk about True Grit, 310 to Yuma, like Unforgiven, and then this just isn't one of them.
It's kind of,
there haven't been that many, and this just isn't on those lists.
It isn't on those lists, but I think it's really solid. I think it is elevated through some great technical filmmaking, but not a great film. It's good. It was solid. How do you feel? Are you in line with that, or something very different?
More or less. Now, my enjoyment was impacted by the fact that this movie really is just the parts I remembered. Like, I wanted to go and revisit it, but
I must be forgetting stuff.
No, I wasn't. It was just the setup for like the 4 or 5 interesting and kind of exciting moments, and there was just really nothing around it. I think that there was, I think you said it, poor performances, there was miscastings, there was fun stuff. It doesn't really gel together into something that was really worth a rewatch and getting super excited about. But I do agree that there are some cool things to talk about. It's a dad Saturday afternoon movie and a fine one.
It's also a movie that, like this show, we show clips from movies. This movie is a great highlight reel.
Yeah.
There's so many great shots in this movie. Everything in between it is fine. But the big highlight money shots are great, and I'm excited to put those into this because it's well worth a couple scenes to check this out, even if a lot of it is kind of more dry.
A lot of our movies, I'll say, hey, go watch it. You don't want to get spoiled. This one, it's kind of fine. Come, just watch our video, watch these 10 clips. You get it.
You get it. Throw it on a Sunday afternoon if you want. But
yeah.
We're gonna go through this movie, same as always, beginning, middle, and end, full spoilers. Buckle up for some deep diving. How does this movie open? This movie opens with, Sharon Stone riding towards Jigsaw.
Yep. That took me a minute to recognize him. I saw him
too.
in the opening credits.
I actually didn't recognize him until like 2/3 of the way through the movie when he shows up again.
Right.
I was like, oh, it's Jigsaw.
Yeah. Or the record store owner from Seinfeld, as more of you probably recognize him.
I'll give you $5.
I don't even remember what he was doing. He's burying gold, and she.
Yeah, they never really get into it.
I think he just tries to attack her because he
Something.
thinks she wants his gold, and then there's a great. As I said, the highlight of this movie are the shots. There's a first-person perspective gunshot.
Yeah.
And she rides on out of
She
there.
knocks him out, chains him up to a wagon, and just takes off.
Yeah. It's like the only scene that exists outside the town.
Yeah.
So
Just kind of to establish that she's tough. Like, she's not like a law person.
No.
She's not. She just kind of rode up on this guy and kicked his ass in the
kicked his
desert.
ass. and then rides on into town.
Yeah.
But before that happens, the credits are rolling. We'll get it. Obviously, every single person in this movie is famous, like to a weird degree. So
Yeah.
the credits are rolling. I'm like, what the hell? Aren't they out of guys I'm going to recognize? Did you recognize the director of photography in the opening credits?
No, I didn't spot this.
Dante Spinotti, Green Corner MVP. I think you gave him MVP
Did I
for
really?
Manhunter.
That was him?
Was it not Dante Spinotti?
I'm picking Dante Spinotti, who's the director of photography.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. I did not catch that.
So this
It was literally one page before in my notes, Dante Spinotti.
the DP for this is the same as Manhunter, which you gave MVP. So
I did.
he's back. And speaking of
I
that,
know Dante.
well, she's like riding into town. There's a couple shots like this in the movie, but there is a shot of her up on a hill looking down on the town before she rides in. And it is like a magnificent shot. It looks
Yeah.
like a painting. And it's clearly a mixture of like a matte painting backdrop, like the old Star Wars style matte painting with some kind of lighting effect. Like it's a composed shot, but it looks beautiful. And there's a number of these more painting-esque shots woven in that really elevated the movie because a lot of it looks good, but is shot kind of dryly and it's all in the same location. So every once in a while, these kind of beautiful vistas do kind of, they give you that Western coziness, I guess, that you're looking for.
Yeah, I actually had the same note and the same feeling for that scene. I will say that throughout the rest of the movie, it didn't share a lot of DNA with stuff like Good, Bad, and the Ugly for me. Like the real classic meaty Westerns. Like it's not, this is not 100% a Western. Like it is, but it doesn't, it very much does its own thing through a lot of the middle of the movie. And it's just kind of, it strays enough that it was nice, those moments where it really did feel like a classic Western, where it's like there's the lonesome guitar panning over the ridge.
Yeah.
And that was...
I totally agree. It's not like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly because that movie is like this epic. It's like an opera, and there's the civil wars going on in the background, and
Yeah.
they go town to town. The scale is enormous. This is like one town, one bad guy, lonesome hero rolls into town. It's more like the first two movies in the Dollars trilogy.
Yeah.
Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, which is just Clint Eastwood rolling into town, beats the bandits, and rolls out. It's more like those small-scale westerns. And I think it's strongly trying to evoke that. That seems to be what he's going for.
In plot, but I think I'm just talking more about kind of the feeling and the vibe. The Sam Raimiism. It's not to say that it like ruined it and that it should have felt more like a 60s spaghetti western or 40s spaghetti western, because it wasn't going for that. All I'm saying is that I was happy and I was hungry for more of those little moments that did feel very kind of classic cowboy.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I guess we've basically set up the rest of the movie, right? Like it's...
Yeah, the rest of this movie is... are you familiar with the term anime tournament arc?
I am not.
Okay, so hopefully some of our loyal viewers are. Many animes do this and have kind of taken this over as their thing, where you do a tournament. There's just a bracket, and it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense. Maybe it does, but at some point over there in Japan, they realize that this is just a really compelling situation.
Okay.
That's just a lot of fun. So, I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z,
Yeah.
these are all... There's tournament after tournament where somebody's got a big chalkboard and it's all right, it's this guy versus that guy.
Interesting.
Naruto famously has probably the most famous one, but they go back even further, even before this movie. And fundamentally, this movie is an anime tournament arc.
Wow, that's
It is-
so interesting because that aspect of the movie is something I have in my notes that I loved. I had no idea it was a thing that existed outside of this.
I'm not going to say Sam Raimi took it from anime, because at that point it was probably like manga that wasn't
And I'm
in
sure anime
English
got
yet.
it from something else. Like, these things go on
Yeah.
forever. But I found, the central premise is there is a quick draw competition where
Yeah.
you're going to do a shootout in the street, but it's a bracket, and the winner gets $100,000.
Which back in Old West times is like 10 million. Like it's
At least.
a hilarious
So-
amount of money.
Yeah, like it's a never work again, won
Yeah.
the lottery, and your generations forever to come will have enough money kind of money.
Yeah.
But you have to win a shootout competition. And it's basically this one small town. All these folks roll in to accept the competition, from adventurers to criminals to our hero Sharon Stone.
Yeah.
And people living in the town, like Mr. Herod,
Yep.
the evil town mayor, his son, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a whole mix of characters. And I thought, it's so funny, this anime arc thing, because I'm like, what a compelling premise. Is you have all these characters that you at least know who they are, and some of them like, and you pit them against each other in a sudden death scenario. Because
Yeah.
it's not like they're playing football.
Yeah.
One of them's gonna like die.
Or at least be out of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Like some of them, yeah.
Which is, and when it's constantly two characters knowing that one of them is gonna be removed from the film at any one point, is such a fascinating premise. And it was like, it made what is such a basic story arc into something compelling because the stakes are so high the whole time.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that premise. And it better be a good premise because it's all the movie is. There's nothing else.
Oh yeah, no. I completely agree. I think it's great, and I mean, that's the best part of Naruto and the best part of Dragon Ball
Yeah.
Z, and I could do a much longer list. Like I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, it works.
It scratched the itch of watching sports.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I actually want to know who's gonna win. Like
Yeah.
one of them has to win.
And the other nice part about it is that it really lets you highlight characters without necessarily needing to get too invested. You can have, it's a great way to have a character with just no depth and like one thing.
Right.
Mark Boone Jr. is like, he escaped from prison and he's a jerk. End of list.
Right.
But he serves a great purpose in the plot now.
Yeah.
Because he gets to just like be in one round of this and be a threat for one set enclosed little chunk of the movie.
Yep.
And it's great for that. And that's, again, a very anime thing where you'll just have like, I'm the bees guy and I got a lot of bees, and then he loses and now he's never in the show again.
Or my personal favorite, Lance Henriksen.
Yeah.
Who is like, I was so sad that he ends up losing pretty early.
Yeah.
But he's hilarious.
He's like, he has to like talk you through it. He's like, I got all these aces because I'm the ace
kill
guy.
him.
See, I put an ace in every time I kill him.
And when they're putting names up on the board, he's like, put an ace up. Everyone will know what that means. It's like,
Everyone's like, yeah, we get it, dude.
you like
Relax.
ace guy.
Put an ace up there. Everyone will know what that means.
Russell Crowe shows up. First American movie for Russell Crowe. He'd never done Hollywood film before. He was only an actor in Australia prior to that. Shows up as the preacher, the reformed bandit. He gets hung by Gene Hackman in this scene.
Yep.
And then Gene Hackman starts shooting the chair with his gun, which I loved. I thought it was a really great, engaging little sequence. And the clincher is Sharon Stone saves him by shooting the noose off with a gun right at the last second, which is a great sequence. There's a couple points in this movie where the script goes above and beyond, and this is one of them because that would have been a fine action sequence, a fun, engaging thing to watch. The fact that they actually tie this back to the ending of the movie, which we'll get to, was great and not something I expected. This would have worked on its own, but it actually had another payoff later in the movie, which is really cool.
Put them both in the contest. Hey, drink for all fighters. Move it, preacher.
There was a great Sam Raimi shot here where Russell Crowe's the preacher is introduced. And in order to see if he's still fast, Gene Hackman throws a glass at him. And we get the camera inside the glass and it flies
That
toward
was
him.
good.
I said you're still fast.
Faster than you.
I won't lie to you, like, of all of the little director hallmarks, this one it kind of takes you out of it. Like, after that happened, I was like, oh, that's fun. And then, wait, what's going on in the actual scene?
Yeah.
I would say it bordered on distracting.
I wanted to talk about this later, but
Okay.
screw it. We'll just get into it now.
Sure.
I have the opposite feeling about this because I find the Sam Raimi style, although very fun, is like you can't ignore you're watching a Sam Raimi movie. When I watched Army of Darkness, I remember being like, this is a blast. But every time there's a Sam Raimi-esque thing, you're taken out of the movie, but it's fun that you're being taken out of the movie.
Groovy.
But I could definitely see people not liking Sam Raimi's style. If you don't like this, it would become very irritating to watch one of his movies.
Well, I think this movie strays a lot closer to a real movie, which
That's
is
what I was going to get into,
Yeah.
is that the Sam Raimi style sticks out like a sore thumb if you don't like it. I think in a Western, his style is better integrated organically. Because the Wild West is already kind of this wacky, weird thing. Old Hollywood, there's lots of other motifs going on. His style, I found stuck out less in this than his other movies, than like Spider-Man, where it feels weird and it is kind of like that's a Raimi-ism within a normal movie. In the Western motifs, I found it more seamlessly integrated, and I think if you showed this to someone who didn't know who Sam Raimi was, they would just be like, oh, that's a Western-y thing.
Oh, okay.
And that was one of the thoughts I had watching the movie, was that I think of all the genres he could tackle, this one is probably the most suited to seamlessly integrate his style. But I feel like that's kind of the opposite of what you're saying.
I'm saying it specifically for things like the shot of the glass.
Okay.
And there wasn't many. I think some of the Raimi-isms that worked, the way he does visual storytelling, there was another little scene where they're introducing one of the gunfighters and a guy walks down the stairs and goes, "I'm Virgil Sparks." And then they cut away.
Virgil Sparks, the pride of Texas.
Virgil Sparks, write the list.
But then when they cut away, it's to Sharon Stone talking about something else. Directly behind her is Virgil Sparks' wanted poster.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just like, it's little.
Yeah.
But he does a lot of this in Spider-Man 2, where it's just the sets, it's comic booky, it's over the top, it's 40s, where it's just like, here's information.
Yeah.
And it's integrated organically, but it's not realistic.
Yeah.
But it's just a good way to tell a story.
And he's a master of like blocking.
Yeah.
The way people move about scenes is as important as the dialogue. He never shoots something just flat. It's
Yeah.
always super kinetic.
When we're introduced to the name of the town, it follows Sharon Stone's boots past the Redemption, and it's spelled out on 20 wooden posts, and it's like, no one's making that in the Old West.
Yeah.
But it was really fun.
Yeah.
And those Raimi-isms, I agree, worked really well to kind of create an interesting style and and mood. But specifically the glass thing was just like, that makes
It
sense.
is like Looney Tunesy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So we spend kind of our first 10 minutes here. Sharon Stone is just kind of quietly wandering around town, meeting all these characters. And at this point, I was feeling okay towards her. I mean, she's cast as Clint Eastwood. She's the man with no name.
We gotta
except
talk
the
about
lady.
this. Because I don't think she was that good in this movie. I also don't really know Sharon Stone's body of work very well. Like, I have not seen the major
Yeah.
Sharon Stone movies.
Like, I'm aware of Basic Instinct, which was only famous for,
Yep.
let's say, not her acting.
Yes, which I haven't seen.
No, me neither. There's like, I could maybe come up with a couple more, but she's obviously very pretty and had a big career.
She was a huge megastar when this came out. She was in like a huge pull
Yeah.
in the 90s. She had enough pull that my understanding is the studio had her select the director.
Really?
So, and she was the one who got the Leo cast. She insisted Leonardo DiCaprio be in the movie. So
Wow.
she was important. I think in the movie she's okay. I'm trying to be fair to her because I do want to put my bias on the table here. If Clint Eastwood gave this exact same performance, everyone would be like, he was great. He's classic, silent protagonist Clint Eastwood. And everyone would just be like, it was another Clint Eastwood Western. But because it's her, and she's this beautiful leading star,
With like perfect teeth and
Yeah.
like coiffed hair and
suddenly I expect her to do something else. And
Yeah.
then she doesn't. She just walks around and is a strong silent type, and I'm judging her for that performance. So it's like, is it me? Am I like, is it unfair because she's doing Clint Eastwood's performance, but she's not him? Is that her fault? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much to put on her.
I totally get it, but the thing I want to point out there is that it's not just we're comparing her to just insert bland man. Clint Eastwood was not like everyone else.
No, he
Clint
wasn't.
Eastwood was,
he
like,
had star power. He was...
specifically in that role of a guy who delivers no dialogue and you have no information and he doesn't really do anything. Like within that set, no one's ever done it like Clint Eastwood.
no, and he just oozes cool.
Yeah.
Like he jumps off the screen even doing nothing.
And I think you cast a lot of really talented actors in this role where you're like, you don't have a name, you don't have any motivation till the last 5 minutes, and you don't really say anything. Most of them are gonna flounder.
Yeah.
Like most A-list actors and actresses can't pull this off, and I don't think it's totally unfair to say that Sharon Stone did not deliver an Eastwood-esque performance.
No,
here.
and also she's
She
just
was
like
fine.
one of the most beautiful people on the planet
Yeah.
in good makeup, in like she felt like someone doing dress up.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know how you make her not look like that. Like it might just be miscasting. 'cause
Yeah, like
she just doesn't. A person that looks like this wouldn't exist in the Old West.
And especially because everyone else, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio is him, but he's a kid and it's fine. But all the extras in this
Yeah.
are like warts and like
Yeah, no
they're
teeth.
just filthy.
Yeah.
And so just watching her walk around next to these people, this is not something I'd usually complain about.
Yeah.
But here it was jarring. It was like the Monty Python scenes. Oh, he must be a king.
Yeah.
Who's that then? I don't know. Must be a king. Why? He hasn't got shit all over him.
Before we're gonna get into the competition, the most of this movie is just two people have a gunfight. We'll break some stuff down. I need to address before they do that Sharon Stone and Leonardo DiCaprio having sex was very weird.
That was weird. He was 21. I did look this up.
He does look like he's
He
14.
looks like he's 14, but he was 21.
Okay, that's good.
She was like 30-something,
Yeah.
I think.
And obviously, I know when it's an older woman and a younger guy, everyone screams, but when it's flipped, it's fine. But this did seem... There was no part of the first scene where I'm like, oh, he's going to score.
Yeah.
She's like totally writing him off, and I'm like, that's fun. Like, he's hitting on her, but she's an older woman who's like, screw off, kid.
How you doing?
Do we have any more fighters?
Just fine.
Yeah.
Then they do have sex, and I'm like, that's weird. This
Yeah.
was a strange choice.
Want some breakfast? Or, how about a little of what we had last night?
And in the sex scene, we learn that he is the son of Mr. Herod. He's the son of
Yes.
Gene Hackman. So that is why it's an important scene.
We also get a little bit of Chekhov's dynamite here, I believe, where she finds the huge barrel of dynamite in the room, and it's
Yep.
just like, oh, would you look at that?
Look at all that dynamite.
Last thing I remember was you puking and passing out behind the saloon, so let's not plan the wedding yet, okay?
All right.
We
Yeah.
basically now get into all the gunfights.
Yes.
And the rest of the movie is the bracket. It is gunfight, gunfight, gunfight until the finale, which is the final gunfight.
Yes.
So we'll talk about a couple specifics. I do need to call out that Jigsaw, the man she beat up at the beginning, does show up again.
Yep.
And he still has the wheel attached to him.
I challenge you.
You weren't really expecting him much from him, but then he shows back up, and it's actually like a really important plot scene because she's trying to challenge Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
And right before she does, he challenges her.
Yeah, which distracts her, and because the whole movie, she's obviously got some beef with Gene Hackman. We don't know why yet, but Sharon Stone is here because she wants to kill Gene Hackman, and we start getting nightmare sequences of her as a little girl with being traumatized by a band of villainous men, which is Gene Hackman. It's
Kinda
pretty
put it
obvious
together.
pretty quickly.
You start getting little bits of Gary Sinise, who's her dad.
Yeah.
She like opens the old picture, and then you start to see his face a little
So
bit.
there's a revenge angle. We get the first day of the competition, started by a beautiful gun loading montage. This, if you like guns and old-timey pistols, this movie would be like porn.
Yeah.
Because there's like a 4-minute sequence of people loading guns with crash zooms. And eventually I was like, is it gonna stop? What is happening? And it goes directly into the first day of shootings, which are mostly named plot character killing character we don't know.
Yeah.
Because this first round of the bracket, it would be too many people to kill initially, so it's mostly just unknown people shooting each other. But it's really nicely done.
Yeah,
with the
they're fun.
flying gun and the black backdrop.
I think the only one of substance here is Herod, Gene Hackman versus Ace, I think happens at the end of the first round.
Oh, right, yeah.
And this is where we get some real, not our first, but one of the most prominent moments of Gene Hackman, where he calls out Ace saying, all those stories using to spread your reputation, I killed those guys.
It's true that you gunned down 4 men.
2 with my left hand, 2 with my right hand.
And I'm faster than you, and he just absolutely Darth Vader's him.
Emasculates him in front of the whole town, then kills him.
You see, I was the one that really killed the Terrence brothers. And I doubt if a lying little chicken shit like you was even in the same state.
This is Darth Vader choking out the general.
It is.
That's this scene.
Apology accepted, Captain Nida.
Another great duel in this is the kid versus the Swedish guy.
Yeah.
It's a more extended sequence. I want to call this out because it happens throughout the movie. Most of the movie is just 2 people having a gunfight.
Yeah.
But Sam Raimi did find a way to make each gunfight completely visually distinct. And the first one I noticed was the kid and the Swedish guy, because I think they're kind of doing a slowly build tension where it's like gun, eyes, clock, and it's more crash zoom and it's more fast. But then one of the next gunfights, like I have my notes, can't remember which it is, it's like dead silent. And there's no camera movements, there's no crash zooms, it's completely based on wide shot suspense.
Yeah.
And he kept doing it throughout the movie. Each gunfight had a different thing, so your brain could actually separate the gunfights. And I was just thinking, like, most directors would be like, yeah, how the hell am I going to shoot 14 gun battles, and that's the plot, and have it not just be super boring? You need to do something truly unique, and I think Sam Raimi did accomplish that.
That was a note that I had, is that I think that he did an admirable job, but at a certain point, it's really tough to make 12 quick draw gunfights
It is.
all interesting. He did pretty good.
I think he did as good as you could.
He did. It still kind of got to the point where, like, if this is the only exciting thing happening for the first hour, it's like...
And you are kind of thinking, like, is this going to be the first act?
Yeah.
And then there's a part of the story that's not the tournament? No.
And I think the movie could have been stronger by some kind of diversion here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know that it needed it.
There was a cut wedding scene. It's like there was cut stuff, but
Yeah.
it still ended with the end of the tournament. I think the tournament was never going to be not the whole movie. You know?
Yeah, and I think that there could have been a way. The one I think between the first and second round, one of the great kind of pace break is Herod invites Sharon Stone, who doesn't give her name, by the way, so we're not forgetting
It is Ellen in the credits.
Okay.
I don't remember if anyone called her Ellen.
I think
multiple
right at the
people
end.
call her Lady.
Yeah.
So, but it is Ellen in the credits.
But anyway, she has dinner over with Gene Hackman, and this was probably my favorite scene just on kind of critical quality. I think this stood out from the rest of the movie, whereas this is not good because of how wacky or exciting, or this was just a well put together scene. This was just like a seriously tense scene between where Gene Hackman was doing most of the heavy lifting, but I thought this was really solid. So he invites her over to dinner. They deliver kind of some dialogue where he's trying to suss out who she is and why she's here. She's trying to assassinate him. She has a hidden pistol in her sleeve. And it's just this great, tense little Hitchcockian scene of her trying to set the gun up under the table while he's doing his mustache twirling dialogue.
Did you ever kill anyone?
Sure.
I don't think you have.
Well, and she cocks the pistol,
Yeah.
which he hears. And then she hears a countering cocking of the pistol. She thinks she does. She hears click, click.
Yeah.
But we don't see him with his hand on the pistol. But it's enough for her to panic and give up. And at the end of the scene, as she's about to leave and turns, he shows it was a lighter.
Which is so good.
That was beautiful. This scene was probably one of the highlights. It was one of the better scenes. There's another one I'll talk about later. But this was like the Gene Hackman show scene.
Just his facial acting when he hears her cock the gun. It's small, but like I was just looking at that going, that is a master of his craft.
It is. And you completely believe, like, he is a real psychopath in that he says, like, I'm not scared of dying. I had all this stuff happen. My father committed suicide in front of my mom. All this stuff that explains his ideology, that he's not afraid to die. He doesn't care about anyone else.
He's spending a preposterous amount of money just to do this.
Yeah.
He's hired 30 goons just to enforce this tournament. Like,
But you believe him.
you do.
Understand this. There's nothing on this earth that frightens me now. Nothing.
He's 100% genuine, and he sells it as like he's crazy, but he genuinely believes everything he's saying, and this is like legitimate. He's being honest, which is really tough because it's mustache twirling comic book villain. This could easily not have felt like a real guy, but in the hands of Gene Hackman, he does it.
And I think there's a lot of examples of this where the villain isn't as strong and the main character is, and it's more about them, right? And I think the fact, so, I mean, you go back to any Clint Eastwood movie, there's the scene where the bad guy is delivering his monologue about why he's a bad guy, and you're focused on Clint Eastwood, you're right? You're like, yeah, I get it, he's the bad guy. How are we going to beat him? But this scene, you're like, get out of the way, Sharon Stone.
Yeah, I don't care about you at all.
I just want to hear Gene Hackman talk.
Yeah, and
being able to bring that much depth to it, to what is just should be a very one-note character, was great.
The people in this town, they need me. I bring a sense of order to their lives.
so there's this vulnerability that they explore with Mr. Herod, which she asks about the preacher, because Russell Crowe is a preacher now, but he used to be a bandit who ran with Mr. Herod, but he's reformed himself and is now a preacher.
Right.
And the whole thing is Mr. Herod has taken him captive and is toying with him.
And has like burned down his parish too, and,
Yeah.
and has him like shackled in the middle of town.
And he's forcing him to be part of the quick draw tournament because he knows he's a great shot. And you don't really understand why he wants Russell Crowe to be around. Like, why does he care? Why doesn't he just kill him, right?
Yeah.
And he reveals in this dinner scene is that Russell Crowe believes he can change his ways. He was a criminal. He was a bad man, but he's reformed as a preacher. He's trying to do good. He's trying to become a good man. And that is shattering Mr. Herod's idea of the world. Because if Russell Crowe can reform himself and can be a good man, then it means that he could as well.
If a man is a killer, then that's what he is. There's no dishonor. But don't let that same man suddenly tell me that it's not in his blood anymore.
Whereas clearly Mr. Herod has resigned himself to being like, I'm so far down the rabbit hole of criminal acts, of being a bad man, that I could never redeem myself. So I'm not even going to try, and I'm just going to give up on my humanity and just commit to being a bad guy. But Russell Crowe is challenging that notion. He's forcing me to think about, like, could I change my ways? Is there another path for me? Which he doesn't like. He doesn't want to confront that reality. So he's trying to force Russell Crowe to basically turn to the dark side.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much like Vader and Luke. He wants to prove that Russell Crowe is still evil to show that he can't, it's not even worth him trying to be good.
Yeah.
That shred of humanity is gone forever. And that's, when I talk about a couple areas this movie went above and beyond, that is one. Mr. Herod did not have to have that level of depth. He could have just been mustache-twirling villain who wants to win the prize. But that was a really complicated and interesting relationship between him and the preacher, Russell Crowe, that I really appreciated.
Why does he upset you so much?
So next we start to get into our more impactful duels where it's actual named character against named character. We won't go through every single duel, but I do want to talk about Keith David and...
Love Keith David.
I've got to love Keith David as Cantrell, who's a hired gun who takes no pleasure in killing, but is apparently very good at it.
Yeah, the town has hired him because they want Gene Hackman to die, basically. So the town has pooled their money to fund one outside gunfighter to hopefully actually win the tournament and in turn kill Gene Hackman.
Who brought you here? To fight me?
I have one note on Keith David here that I'm realizing I should have worded differently, which is that Keith David has an amazing pipe. But he does. It's this like steampunk pipe that he smokes in this scene, and I was like, you know what? Keith David has an amazing pipe. So
My name's Clay Cantrell, and I'm a shootist.
And then they have their duel, which was probably the most visually like shocking and well done duel in the movie for me.
It's the one where he shoots him, but then he keeps monologuing, and as Keith David keeps going for one more shot, he turns and shoots him again.
Until eventually you get the shot of the back of Keith David's head that and then blows out, and you see Gene Hackman through the hole in his head.
Through the hole in the head. The semifinals then start, which is the kid, Leonardo DiCaprio, versus his dad in Gene Hackman.
Yeah. They don't do a lot with them being family. I mean, it's
There's a couple moments throughout where Leo wants to take over, but he doesn't like his dad. He doesn't live with him. He's totally separate from him. But it is his son. And there's a couple of moments that show they are on like speaking terms. Gene Hackman has gone to his store to buy a gun at one point.
And Gene Hackman does care about him.
He does.
Like, he's not a loving father, but he is trying through the whole thing to get Leo off the path of them ending up in a duel together.
Yeah, and
he gives them a lot of outs.
Even in this duel, he's like, you need to retire from the tournament. You need to bow out.
Drop out. You've made your point.
I don't know how you felt. I really didn't think they were actually going to do it.
This was one of the scenes I remembered. Unfortunately, this was another one of those where Leo gets shot and he dies, and it's sad. It hits. But I remembered this exactly. Okay. This was like I think this was the number one scene that was fixed in my brain from watching
SLC Punk death scene.
Yeah.
Where you knew it and I didn't going in.
Yeah.
Because to me, this was the highlight of the movie.
Yeah.
I think emotionally, visually, tension, everything, this was the peak of the movie because, Gene Hackman wins the duel.
They do a really great fake out because in Leo's first duel against the Swede, there's like the shot, you don't know what happens, and he falls to his knees, and you go like, what? And then he gets back up and he's like, ooh, I got him. I'm so fast.
He says, I'm so fast.
And then they do the opposite in this.
He says so fast, like, but he's talking about...
Yeah, you see Gene Hackman get hit, and Leo's just like, I got him. And then he like looks down.
Straight through the belly.
Yeah.
Shit, that was fast.
And this was I mean, Leo is early on in his career, and it's hard for me to separate this. I think of Leo as like mega superstar now. I don't even think of him as like an artist or an actor, which isn't criticism of his acting ability. It's that he's so famous. It's easy to forget that he was at one point like an actor doing character roles and wasn't just assumed to be a super megastar.
I think neither of us have seen Gilbert Grape, right?
No.
Because I think that was before this, and that was where he kind of broke it. It might have been a little after, but this was around the same time, and apparently is an excellent performance.
Because when he's being cocky throughout the rest of the movie, he's fine, but I kind of imagine that's what Leo at this age would have been like in real life.
Yeah,
boisterous, larger than life, and he does a good job.
Gave him a hat, and we're like,
Yeah.
let's just be you.
But this death scene is heartbreaking. The doctor comes over, doesn't even touch him, he's this crappy doctor, just shakes his head. And then it's not a stoic death scene. Leo is crying, he's saying like, I don't want to die, he's grabbing for people to support him. It's like really messed up.
Jesus, I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Every other death scene to this point, like a bunch of like weirdos run out and start tearing the boots off.
Yeah.
Like, this movie does not. There's only a couple times this movie shows death as being an important thing.
And I think this scene shows why Leo would go on to become a star.
Yeah.
This shows his actual star power. Gene Hackman comes over and tries to explain why he shouldn't care. He's like, well, we don't really know he's my son, and I told him to bow to the tournament. So that's not. But you can tell Gene Hackman.
He's like on the back foot here. He feels he's struggling with it.
He does not. He's struggling to make this make sense for sure.
I gave him a way out. He wouldn't take it.
And I like that they had Leo hit him. Like that was.
Yeah, like he's still a good shot. He's the closest that Herod has come to being killed.
It was a small thing, and then for the rest of the movie, they don't even just forget about it. For the rest of the movie, he's like holding the cloth over his neck. Is good.
We get to the other semifinals, which is Court versus Sharon Stone. He wins. She dies. I don't know if the movie thought I would believe it.
Okay, I obviously knew, but you
I was
didn't
just
buy
like,
it.
oh, she's not dead.
Yeah.
It was so obvious. I thought the twist was going to be that she was dead.
No, you're going too far back. They didn't do double twists in the 90s.
I'm like, oh, but she's no bullet wound, and it looks like fake blood.
And she asked about ink like 2 minutes before.
Yeah.
She asked the blind kid, what kind of inks do you have?
What kind of ink do you have?
Any kind you need.
There's no death scene. There's no like shot of her going. Oh. She's just not shown on camera anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, she's alive.
Yeah.
And then anyway, so that she tricks everyone in the movie. Russell Crowe wins his round, which pushes them into the final duel. The final duel is rigged because one of Gene Hackman's goons is mad at Russell Crowe for breaking his nose, so he breaks his hand the night before the duel.
Which is hard not to talk about Gladiator.
Oh yeah,
because that's exactly how
that's
Gladiator
what
ends.
happens.
Smile for me now, brother.
They get out into the street, the big showdown. Gene Hackman's not happy that his hand's broken, so he kills the guy who broke his hand.
Yeah.
Because he wants it to be a fair duel, but he still says, we're still going to proceed. I can even use my left hand if you want. We can do left-hand duel.
I could draw with my left hand. How does that sound?
I'm reading into this too much. This is not the intent. I was getting some gay coding on this scene. Maybe not actually gay, but there is something going on. Gene Hackman's relationship with Russell Crowe in this movie is so weird. Like, why keep this man who you hate and want to kill alive as kind of a plaything?
And chain him up.
And he even says, like, since the day I've met you, I've wanted to fight you. I've been waiting for this my whole life. I want to fight you.
I always wanted to fight you, Court. Ever since the first time I saw you.
This feels like the climax of a weird sexual tension coding going on here. And
okay.
It's just this itch that I had to scratch.
Gene Hackman doesn't have a wife. They ask about his wife, and she said she was unfaithful, implying he might have killed her, but there's no love interest.
I would think a man like you would have a woman.
He makes a point of saying he's attracted to Sharon Stone when it's completely inappropriate.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was just
that's not really, like, it's weird. It wasn't, like, believably delivered.
It wasn't believable.
Now, I find myself almost uncontrollably attracted to you. I hope you don't mind my saying that.
And he brought Russell Crowe in when he was young and was like a mentor. I'm like, there's something going on
you know
here.
what? I accept this fanfic.
Yeah.
You can
I
go
don't
ahead and
think
write
it was in the script, but I think Gene Hackman gave a little bit more sensitivity to the character that made me read into this, maybe more than I should have.
I don't think it's unfair, and I'd be curious if Sam Raimi or Gene Hackman had any of that in their mind, or if it's just kind of where it... Because, I mean, it's entirely possible they wrote the script and they realized it required to be Gene Hackman to be, like, completely obsessed with Court for the whole movie. And it was just hard not to kind of get there.
Yeah, maybe that's
Or
why
if
they
it was-
initially shot a sex scene, to be like, he's not gay.
Oh, yeah. The famous 90s not gays.
Yes.
It takes a lot to scare me. I love the sensation.
But anyway, it's not gay and they don't kiss.
No.
And instead, the shootout's about to happen. It's rigged because even if Russell Crowe wins, he instructs his stormtroopers to shoot him
Right.
no matter what.
Whatever happens, if he's still standing in the end, gun him down.
And right before the shootout, the entire set is blown up.
Oh, man, is it ever. You had the Schrodinger's dynamite, or not Schrodinger's. You had the Chekhov's dynamite.
Chekhov's dynamite.
And you thought, we're pretty sure Sharon Stone was still alive, so you expect something, and they deliver.
They delivered. And I was just watching it thinking, oh, that's why they built the set. They got one take at this because they actually blew up the set.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is where we get the flashback, the final explanation, because Sharon Stone shows back up. She, of course, orchestrated the explosions.
Mm-hmm.
We cut back to the flashback where her dad, the marshal, was hung, going to be hung by Gene Hackman.
Yep.
Gene Hackman did the same trick where he's shooting the stool.
Yep.
But he gave Sharon Stone, at 5 years old, a gun and said, if you can shoot the harness off, your dad can go free, or the noose. I was pretty sure she was not going to set her dad free, obviously.
Yeah.
But I thought she was going to miss 3 times. I did not think she'd shoot her dad in the head. Immediately.
Yeah.
That was pretty rough. And I think actually did a good job to explain the hatred for Gene Hackman.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, that's really messed up. That would screw you up for life. That's not just like my dad died when I was young and it's Gene Hackman's fault. He forced you to kill your own dad.
Yeah.
And your dad, like, the dad, Gary Sinise is his name,
Gary
right?
Sinise.
He does a good job because he's not just being like totally loving, like, it's not your fault. He does say it's not your fault. This isn't on you. But then he also is realizing, like, if she does this, I'm actually going to live. So he's kind of like, but you can do it. Come on. Use the gun. Like, he's trying to kind of coach her. Like, he still has hope, which makes it worse.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, I shot her in the head.
Yeah, you had to do something to be like, okay, we get Gene Hackman's a bad guy at this point. He's
Yeah.
already, like, murdered a lot of people in cold blood, but they found a way to be like, oh,
He's a very
here's
bad
why
guy.
someone devoted their entire life to pulling up a scheme to get him back.
Yeah,
like,
it's
that
pretty-
makes sense.
It's pretty dark.
That's close enough.
Then we finish off. I mean, Russell Crowe just cartoonishly dispatches the rest of the stormtroopers. And then Sharon Stone
That was
has...
good.
Yeah. That was
The
just fine.
double gun.
Yeah, it's like oh, I don't know, like Deadpool and the first Ryan Reynolds thing where he's just like,
it is.
they're all dead. And then Sharon Stone has her shootout where she gets Gene Hackman.
Big
They kind of
hole
get
in
each
him.
other. Yeah, the shadow. That was a great.
With
That
the
was a
hole
great
through
little
his
Raimi
body.
moment.
Yep.
And then we pretty much just cut to black.
It just ends.
Yeah, it's
There's
just like, we're done. Bye.
She designates Russell Crowe as the new marshal.
Yeah.
Bring law back to this town. I'm like, what town? He just blew up the whole town. Also, how many people died? Because
Yeah.
they blew up like 7 buildings.
We've talked a lot about all the fun and interesting cast of characters. We talked a little bit about Sharon Stone and how she maybe wasn't perfect or perfectly used. We haven't talked much about Russell Crowe. And before I give my thoughts, I'd like you to give your thoughts on how Russell Crowe did in this movie.
I have a note that it seems like Russell Crowe and Sharon Stone are bored.
Yeah.
I also think his accent was quite poor, but I'll give him a pass. It was his first American movie.
Might have even gone to heaven if you'd let me die.
Sorry.
But yeah, he just seems kind of bored. He's going for stoic. But I don't think he was well utilized. I think he was utilized as well or worse than Sharon Stone, who was already kind of bland. And it's a pretty tough leading duo, given that all the side characters are so fun and interesting, and Gene Hackman is just acting his ass off. These two are kind of just like, do we have to watch these scenes? Can't Gene Hackman just have more scenes? That's my thoughts. What, you feel the same, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I think he was in the wrong movie. You could see the Gladiator coming. There was a couple of moments where he kind of had gravitas and where
he has stage presence.
He has stage presence, but he doesn't fit in a Sam Raimi movie. He did not fit opposite Gene Hackman. He has no mirth. He's not fun. He's not a fun guy.
No.
And you needed someone who's going to have a little bit of fun, especially if you're going to have Sharon Stone being Clint Eastwood. You need someone who's going to be enjoying themselves. And there was a couple moments where he like tried. There's that scene where he's laying on his back in the rain trying to like catch raindrops. And it was like, and you're supposed to be like this crazy psychopath murderer guy who reformed as a religious man. And he's just kind of like, hello, I'm Russell Crowe and I'm a crazy guy who's reformed now.
Yeah. Like I was picturing, personally because he's one of my favorite actors, but adjusting for timeline, he would have been too young. But imagine the preachers played by Sam Rockwell.
I knew you were going to say Sam.
Really?
Just once you led up with that.
Because I mean, Sam Rockwell oozes charisma and also is believably a crazy guy, but could be reformed. Like that kind of guy, you need like a bit more of a wild card.
Well, another very different example, but this literal character briefly appears in Game of Thrones, played by Deadwood guy that I'm going to have to look up. He's got a big ugly mug on him.
John Wick guy, right?
Yep, John Wick guy. Come on, we can do it.
No, we can do it.
Ian McShane. So on the first try, I'm gonna say in Game of Thrones, like season 7, you have this exact character show up, played by Ian McShane. Exactly. He's a religious leader who used to be like a soldier, and the Hound meets him. This was not the peak Game of Thrones. If you forgot, fine. But he did a good job as someone who believably used to be like a crazy killer guy and has turned over a new leaf and found his inner peace. And I'm sure there's better examples, but that's the one that jumped to mind. I think Ian McShane, who would have been the right age in this, probably like that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit older, but still.
Yeah, like there's a lot of guys you could have cast, but I think that there were, I don't think this was well done with Russell Crowe.
I just don't believe him as a bandit or as a preacher.
And then when he's doing the scenes where he's actually like gunfighting well, he's bang, 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 got him.
Or when he's doing scenes praying to God, I'm like, you had to read that off the script. You don't know what prayers are.
No. So he was not, I don't think he felt good about the character. I don't think he was well used. I don't think he fit. It wasn't awful.
No.
And like I said, I do see Gladiator and Beautiful Mind coming.
Like he looks like a superstar. I can see how he jumps off the screen. Producers would be like, that guy, if we can get better characterization, that guy's going to be a star. I can see the vision, but it hadn't started yet.
Go check the trivia. I wonder if like Sam Raimi was told he couldn't put Bruce Campbell in that role. Like the studio intervened and was like, no,
this Australian guy,
hot, super Australian up and
Australian guy with over $30. You have to use him. Well, I think we got to score this puppy.
Yeah, we do, and I think because it was my pick.
It's me.
Tell me your critical review, Mr. McLaughlin.
My critical review, I'm going to give this movie a B+.
Okay.
It's a little higher than even I waffled on this a lot. I was thinking B. I'm going to go B+, because I do think this movie executed on being a solid little Western movie. From a technical standpoint, I think it's a fine movie. I think if I push it into the C range, I don't really know how I can justify that, because I think it does go through all the right steps of being a solid movie, a good Sunday afternoon movie, and I don't want to push it down into C realm. So I think it's in the Bs, and I'm going to give it a plus for that Sam Raimi artifice. I think that it is elevated over other boilerplate Westerns through some interesting stylistic choices with the camera, some great interesting performances woven in. And just like little bits of extra effort that aren't enough to put it into an A by any means, but enough that I want to give it a bit of credit. So I'm going to give it a B+ for being a solid movie with some technical elements going above and beyond. For my personal review, I'm going to go down to a B-.
Okay.
I want to talk about something, a very brief aside here.
Aside?
We've talked about this several times in real life, but I don't think we've ever talked about it on the show, or we haven't in depth.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. And that's about questions.
Yeah.
The thing that interests, the thing that makes me want to go see a movie, and then often my enjoyment of a movie, is based on what questions do I have for this movie to answer. So this is probably why I'm so attracted to the horror genre, because every horror movie inherently has questions with mystery and suspense. Who's the killer? What's the monster? What does the monster look like? What's going on in this weird, spooky small town? And you watch a horror movie trailer and you're automatically like, ooh, I want to figure out what the thing is.
Yeah.
Non-horror movies can do this too. Like we just watched Alex Garland's Civil War. My questions for that movie: how do you portray a civil war in modern day? How does this stack up to Alex Garland's body of work, all of which I've mostly loved? So there's like behind the scenes questions, script related questions, all of that. This movie, no questions. Going into it, I'm like, it's gonna be a fine Western. Maybe my only question is like, how do all these giant name actors exist in one movie? But outside of that, it's like, there's not a lot of things I'm curious about or want to figure out. And when the plot is presented to you, you're also like, oh, so the movie will be the gunfights. And then it is.
Yeah.
So there's no intrigue or mystery. The only suspense comes from action-based suspense in the shootouts. But I have no questions for this movie. It didn't need to give me answers because there was nothing I was curious about.
Could have been an email.
Could have been an email. And that's kind of how I feel about this. And
Okay.
I think that is inherent to Westerns. Like, A Fistful of Dollars probably has the exact same problems on paper. He rolls into town, he saves the town. There's no twists, there's no turns. It's not like there aren't things I'm curious about that I want to go learn and analyze. So from a personal taste perspective, that's why I'm going down to B-, because it just didn't engage me in the things I like about movies as much. It excelled in areas that were really well done, but that I don't care about as much. And it didn't care about stuff that I care about.
I think that's fair. For my critical review, I am going to give Quick and the Dead a B-.
Okay.
I think it is kind of on that low end of kind of Sunday afternoon movies. If I compare to maybe Hunt for Red October is too high a bar, but like...
It's a pretty high bar.
It's a pretty high bar, but even that, I don't think that gets to an A for me. And I definitely think it's fair to put this 2 grades below something like that, or like Minority Report, or... we don't need to get into all of them.
Sunday dad movies.
Sunday dad movies. This is not one that I would really come back to, and there's a couple of kind of pieces to it. One, I would say that I think I have to penalize this a little bit for its scope, and I think it hurt it. I think this movie was not boring at any point because it was such a limited. They set up all the things. They all just happened in a row in an hour and 30 minutes, and we're done. But I think that hurt it a little bit in terms of how exciting it could end up being, because there's just not that... I think you put it well. There was no questions, right? Because there's nothing outside of the town. We know all our characters. There's no new factors introduced. I think that kept it very tight and trim, but it took away some of the suspense and some of the exciting action. It also took some tools out of the kit in terms of Sam Raimi's ability to kind of shake it up, right? I think this movie... I don't have an idea off the top of my head, but something to break it up. Some banditos roll into town.
Yeah.
They have to band together, and there's
second act twist.
Different action set piece where now there's like a whole big gunfight, or like a bear. I don't know, something that isn't just the exact same action sequence. Put a bear in it. Like I just think it needed something like that, and I think that it was a tight, trim little movie, but I got to penalize it a bit for that. And then I think just having 2 poorly cast to bad leads. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. And as good as Gene Hackman was, yeah. So I think it's a B-. I don't think it's like a failure, but that's where it gets me. And then personally, I'm going to drop this all the way down to a C.
Okay.
And the big reason for that is that I watched this movie when I was 12, and I remembered the shootout between Russell Crowe and the indigenous guy where he scrounged around for the bullet.
Yeah.
I remembered Leo and Herod's duel, and then Leo's death scene. And then I remembered everything exploding at the end. That was it.
I watched this yesterday, and those are the things I remember.
Yeah, like genuinely, the dinner scene is the only scene I didn't remember that was above the rest of the movie, and that hurt it. Like this is personal. This is subjective. I get to make the rules, but I picked this movie because I wanted to go back and revisit and be like, oh, I remember some fun little parts. I wonder what else there was. There was nothing else.
You basically got it all.
I got it all, and so I was just kind of bored in between all the exciting scenes that I remembered fairly well.
Right.
And that made it tough. And I think that is personal to me, but it's also like, once you've seen most of it once on cable, you don't need to watch it again.
Yeah.
Like, you won't enjoy watching it again, I don't think. And that's, yeah, I'm going to knock it down a little bit for that.
And credits rolled, and you were like, where the hell is Hidalgo?
Shall we talk about MVPs? And I'm almost certain that one of us is going to have to pick an alternate.
Okay. We can just do the same. It's fine. It's Gene Hackman.
It's Gene Hackman.
I think if we both were that easy, I don't think we need to force ourselves otherwise. I think this movie is kind of only interesting because of Sam Raimi. Like, if this movie was shot flat, it wouldn't work. I need to acknowledge that Sam Raimi's direction is what makes this movie a movie worth watching. If this was shot as a lockdown cameras, there's nothing. But also, if Gene Hackman was played by anyone less good than Gene Hackman, I would not have been engaged by this movie.
Even just any of those generic 90s bad guys, right? Like, there's 70 of them.
Just like even a serviceable character actor.
Let's grab William Fichtner. He was the bad guy in half of the movies that came out in the 90s, and he's just a mean, sinister-looking guy who would have done fine.
I was thinking like the guy who plays Locke in Lost,
the
bald guy.
Terry O'Quinn? O'Quinn.
He's fine.
He's fine.
He was around. He could have been the Mr. Herod, and he would have done a fine job, but I never would have remembered it, and I never would think of this movie again. Gene Hackman's Wyatt. If I was ever going to come back,
he's so slimy
and Gene
Hackman. Charming and charismatic, and just such a good storyteller, like when he's speaking and when he isn't.
Plus, he's deadlifting Russell Crowe and Sharon Stone. He's not only giving his own good performance, he's picking the slack up for the leads being generally pretty dull.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I can agree on that. If I was going to give an alternate, it would be less of an MVP and more of a value over replacement. I think Gene Hackman's a fair pick, but if I pick the person who I think overperformed the average role, Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, he did a great job.
I think if
honorable mention.
Honorable mention. I think if that's any random kid, this movie suffers a lot.
It does.
He was a much needed injection of like another interesting person who you root for. And his death scene was one of the best scenes in the movie. And at this point in their careers, you know Gene Hackman's going to be great. Yeah. It was towards the end of his career. Whereas Leo, this is one of his first roles, and given his lack of experience, is a fantastic job. It's a great honorable mention, but I guess it is our first dual MVPs with Gene Hackman. Good job, Gene Hackman. You've done it.
Understand this. There's nothing on this earth that frightens me now. Nothing.
All right,
well, we were quick, and now we're dead.
That's true.
Thanks so much for watching. If you're curious about this, seek it out. If you're a Sam Raimi fan or a Western fan who's seen all the Westerns except for this, it's worth. It's fine. Put it on a Sunday when you're hungover.
Yeah, it's better than golf.
You won't be offended. Make sure to like and subscribe our video. It helps us a lot. We also do have a Patreon. Go check it out. Lots of fun stuff over there, including a free bonus episode if you want to see our Hell House 2 deep dive. Ooh. And until next time, this has been The Green Corner. What's like a sign off that's westerny?
There's a snake in my boot.
There's a David has a great pipe.
He did have a great pipe. I noticed that too.